Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Here we go again. Welcome back. Season 3, Episode 24. Before we get into it, we're going to be taking a bit of a break over Christmas, so there'll be a few weeks without a podcast where I don't have to spend many hours per week editing and I get to spend some time with my family. So please forgive us that. We've got some great guests lined up for the new year, some properly good guests, and actually I'm really proud of the run of guests that we've had recently too, so hopefully you've been enjoying it. Today we're joined by a friend of Noel's, Neil Gonzalez from Neil's Inn on YouTube and various other blogs and things which he'll explain to you as you go along. It's a good one. There's some great stories here. Mountain lions, bears, floods. It's all there. It's all good. Hope you enjoy it. I've got a friend who lives in Abu Dhabi or somewhere like that, and he gets up at like 4 a.m, take his dogs for a walk in the night, because that's the only time you can actually walk anywhere. And I've seen pictures of him. He's got a swimming pool and he has these huge blocks of ice delivered, which they put into the swimming pool to cool it down so they can actually go for a swim. It's just shocking, isn't it? Oh, this is great though. I've got podcasts now scheduled for the next to actually roll them out for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So this isn't going to come out for about a month, Neil, because I'm so far ahead with recordings and editings. I've just finished editing the Rohit one from last week. And
do you see his stuff, the Toll-Free Traveller, Neil? Do you still see Bikey Traveller people stuff on the internet? Or do you not look at that stuff anymore?
I try not to look at it.
Yeah.
It makes me very uncomfortable.
Why?
Firstly, I'm completely broke. I can't travel. It brings back a lot of bad memories for me. Not bad memories in traveling, but more bad memories of bad thoughts of why I can't currently travel. So kind of like I'm sort of stuck in that. I'll get over it soon, but I will talk about it in I'm sure. But at the moment, I'm really. I have a YouTube channel, as Noel might have told you, that
Neil's Inn.
that's the one that I did get quite a lot of following, more than I ever expected. It generates a lot of anxiety for me to see that, and occasionally I get a comment years later of people saying, "Is there any update?"
I think you jumped in too soon. You were ahead of your time, weren't you? Because I think you kicked off too early. I think if you set off now, you'd find it a lot easier. But you sort of set off 10 years ago, when I don't think it was probably harder to get any kind of traction.
I was thinking of all different tangents I could steer you guys down, but I first started before.
Hey, we'll do the steering.
We've got some fucking rigorous questioning skills between us.
I bet you have. But I was going to say, before GoPro was attainable or even existed, that I think they were really crappy at the time. They were like 480p at the time. The quality was really crap. I fandangled a surveillance camera, this recorder, which was actually like a digital recorder, which was the size of what you'd say like an iPod nowadays, and it had composite cables, and I had to gaffer tape it onto the mudguard, and then it needed a power supply for the recorder and the camera. So I had all these DC adapters, and it just made a load of gluey mess all over the bike because I was just taping everything onto the tank and tape, and the footage was unwatchable because it was all.
But you did invent the GoPro, in principle.
It was actually crap because I set off on my very first trip and the lens was so sensitive that it gone out of focus, and I couldn't review the footage until I got back. And then I found I had all this blurry footage because the lens just.
Yeah.
Oh, good effort though. Thanks for trying. I've obviously been reading up on you on your various blogs and video sites and things like that. You've got like 4 quite significant trips, haven't you? Scandinavia, Africa, the Mediterranean, and America, as we now say on this podcast. Was the Med one with Noel when you went and got the DRZs, or is that a different one?
So 2013, Noel and I set off to pick up a couple of DRZs that I happened to co-own with a couple of.
Whoa! This is not That's not the true version of events, is it? You had 2 DRZs and you sold them to 2 girls from Australia, and you didn't think you'd ever see those bikes again. And off they
Okay,
went.
that's a fair story. It's the fact that I was re-owning something I already owned.
You felt really guilty about making a massive profit. Sold them high, bought them low.
And then resold them high.
So the girls had got as far as Greece, hadn't they? And then they'd realised that things were going to get slightly difficult in terms of crossing borders, and they decided to miss out the tricky bit coming up. Is this right? And then they thought they would just fly the next stretch to India and buy Enfields or something in India to get home to Australia.
My understanding was that they had the dream of just riding back to Australia, but the reality of living in the Western world and doing all the comfortable things that you can do in Europe, crossing borders and buying fuel at the same price everywhere and not having to negotiate many things, became a reality that they weren't going to be continuing once they got beyond Turkey, and they kind of bottled out and decided to do something else. And they caught the Trans-Siberian.
That's the train, isn't it? Where does that go to? Vladivostok or somewhere like that?
I think they just took them to the Middle East somewhere. I think they got off in the Stans and then they caught a flight back from Iraq or Iran or something. I honestly don't remember their story too well. But
so we flew out to Thessalonica.
Thessalonica,
that's it. That's the one. And then when did we meet in the airport and then just walk across town?
I rethink about that so many times, and it's uncanny how this is before Noel had a mobile phone.
you might as well not have one now, to be fair.
2019.
We just bumped into each other at the airport as we agreed and caught a bus without a single utterance of Greek. Got to the hotel or wherever they were staying seamlessly, and it was plain sailing the whole way. And you think about it now, it's like, well, I would be paranoid. I'd be checking my phone all the time. I'd be wondering where Google Maps, where they are, how late are you going to be? You know, all of that was just diminished. I think we just turned up at the same time at the airport, and everything went seamlessly. I don't remember waiting. I don't remember suffering in anxiety about where is that Noel? Has he got his luggage? You know.
So it was the weirdest of trips because we had this plan. Originally, I think we thought about riding them back to London, but then we thought it would get too cold riding north because I think it was November almost, wasn't it, or October?
Yeah.
So then Neil had friends in Barcelona, and we decided to ride to Barcelona from Greece.
We had a look at it, and I also was negotiating how much time it would take for me to take time off work. And I calculated that it would take us only taking 5 days off work, leaving on a Friday night or Saturday morning. We could get all the way to Barcelona in under a week.
Well, I didn't realize that you had 5 days off work to do that whole thing.
And we did it. It was 9 days, so including the weekends, and I was back to work on Monday morning. A week later, having traveled across the Mediterranean, and it was great. And also, I think what we'd calculated was that the weather wasn't so great. It was middle of November, so I think it was like the 9th or the 10th of November, so 2013, and we blitzed it. We did such a good job, and it really was so inexpensive to do. I mean, the fuel in Greece was very expensive, but that was the only thing that really stressed us.
Yeah. We wild camped, Clive. This is where you camp, but not. I don't know if you've never done this, so I might have to explain it. You camp, but not on a campsite.
Sorry, my brain's trying to think of something witty to say, but my mouth's just saying, "Fuck off, you cunt."
I don't think I've ever wild camped with Clive on all the trips I've been on.
Yeah, we have.
Have we?
Yeah, we did it in Wales. Remember, we were on that little kind of. It was almost like an island.
Oh
yes,
the river.
Yes. But that was fine there. Normally, you want to camp on people's driveways. Literally, and that time you suggested it in Wales, we were on the path from the road to a field, and the farmer's gate was there, and it's just like, no, of course you can't fucking wild camp here. What if the farmer comes along and wants to access his field? 6 tents in the way. It's ridiculous.
Well, this is really interesting because this reminds me immediately of when I first met Neil. and we both entered this Horizons Unlimited thing independently. It was taking place in the Pyrenees. It was an Austin. Vince was kind of linked with him, I think, wasn't it? But he wasn't there.
He did all the scouting, so he did all the. It was like an orienteering thing. So we had how to best explain it. He had gone around with Lois, had a load of fun doing his Mountain Madness, and then he'd given us the coordinates, and we were told it's a race, but it's not a race. Please don't speed, but be back as quick as you can, and you assume all responsibility.
So at this point, I've never met Neil. I apply as an individual. He applies as a solo individual. So it was Horizons Unlimited, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So they then teamed up the people who were just solo and just teamed them up into small teams. So I've not met Neil, and I think we must have had some either email conversation or text conversation at the time. But when I sort of said, "Where should we stay?" you said, "We'll just camp on someone's driveway." So this is where I got the idea, and this is what really is the first time somebody got me thinking of. Well, actually, yes, you can just camp anywhere, can't you?
I'd been looking into it a lot, and I was like, well, you could technically, because I was I'd already been 3 weeks on the road by the time we met. I've been riding through the Pyrenees and through Spain, and I was coming round. I've got family in Spain, so I was visiting family and doing that, and I'd romanticized about the idea of just finding a discreet place and just setting up tents and camping the night and being out in the morning. But the reality was so scary when I was actually thinking about doing it. I never did it. So I met Noel, and I'd already told him, oh, that's what my intention was. And so he'd actually been doing it, and I hadn't done it at all. so it was one of these feedback loops, because he ended up proving to me it was possible. So I started doing it after May.
But that first night that we met near Andorra, and we camped in the valley just above Sort. And we did actually I think you took the brunt of it because of your Spanish, but we did get told off. Do you remember the next day for camping where we'd camped next to that river by a canoeing? I think it was a whitewater company kind of owned that land.
I think their issue with us was more the fire than the camping. Yeah. We had a big fire, but aside from that, was in Spain. Since I was living in Barcelona recently, I learned that the kind of the allowable thing in Spain is called pernoctar, which means that you arrive at sunset and leave at dawn, and that's totally okay. No one can prove that you were there. Leave no trace. And we didn't know that at the time. We were just having a lazy night in, lazy morning in, and having coffee and discussing our chain tension and so on.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with wild camping. There's two things to wild camping. One, find somewhere nice to do it where you're not going to get bothered. Not on the fucking side of a road and a roundabout in France, for example, when we actually fell out for the first time. And two, sometimes it's like I don't get months off to go on trips. I get 25 days a year. So sometimes I just think, actually, no, I want to go stay somewhere nice, have a shower, go to the bar, have a nice meal, and several pints of beer.
Soft, he's soft, basically. That's what he's saying.
It's what?
Nothing. Right.
I've been sort of delving in and out of your videos and your blog, but there's some quite interesting things. I like the end of your American trip when you're really ill in a hammock, and basically you get totally flooded. All your stuff is getting washed away, and at some point it just seemed to me to be implied in your blog. You just thought, "Fuck it, I'm going back to sleep." Just let everything get washed away.
I suffer from migraines, and it can be quite debilitating. I actually get blindness from it, and
blind to all of your kit getting washed down a flood.
Not necessarily that, but I do get get blindness in one eye, and it literally makes me want to vomit, and I'm non-responsive after when that happens. It's also triggered by barometric pressure change. So if it's going to rain, or if it's going to be a storm of the century,
you're like the shittest human weather vane.
I know.
Oh, fucking
tell me about it.
Look, Neil's ill. Get the umbrellas. Sorry, I'm making light of it. I'm glad you're laughing. That was really cruel.
It's totally fine. I but in that said situation, it was blue skies. It was a really glorious afternoon. It was evening. and I was in Utah, and I don't know. I think it must have been August time. Weather, it was blue skies, as I said, when I set up camp, and I was in the middle of nowhere, absolutely remote, 30 miles from anywhere, and I was 5 miles up a track away from the road, so I was nowhere to get help. And suddenly I had this chronic headache come on. I couldn't see out of my eye, and I was like, "That's it. I'm going to sleep. I've got to have to sleep this off because I ran out of pills, and I'm just going to have to sleep it off." I was counting the lightning and the thunder that came in the storm, and it was under a second between the thunder, and I was hearing trees falling around me, and I'm hanging in a hammock. So, so all of that passed, and I ended up sleeping. I had a glorious sleep. Woke up like a bit of a hangover because when you have a migraine, you kind of like you get this tingling sensation, and it was pretty crappy. But I woke up just fine, and I didn't think of anything. I just packed everything up, found everything that was strewn all over the place because there was literally a river flowing underneath my hammock. And refound all my things, put them all away, packed the bike up, and didn't even think to check the bike. And turning the key, dash lit up, and I just sat on the bike and pressed the ignition, and which is a CRF 250L, by the way. I think you guys like those bikes. Yeah. It wouldn't turn. It just was click, 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 click. And I was like, okay, that's not sure. Maybe I need to push start it. So push started it 5 miles down the track to get to the main road. And I thought maybe it got some water in the fuel tanks. By this time, it's about 6 a.m., so 7 a.m. So I started hitchhiking at 7 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. And thankfully, it was Sunday, so people were going to church. So I managed to get lift into town, got some fuel, bought a new jerry can, hitched a ride back with another set of people. But the farmer that was bringing me back couldn't take me all the way, so I started hitching again. Got a couple that were on their way fishing, a guy and a girl. They're in their young 20s. They said, "Oh no, we won't leave you until we can see your bike running." So I was like, "Okay, thank you." Well, I couldn't get the bike running. So they hauled the bike onto the back of their car, onto the pickup. Took me to their uncle's house. We had breakfast at his uncle's house. Couldn't get anything out of the bike, so he called up his dad, which lived in another town. So told his dad to go and buy a spark plug for our CRF 250L. Drove me again from his uncle's house to his dad's house to get the spark plug. We spent another, using the mum's hairdryer and using the dad's tools to get the bike apart and dry out all the electrics. We thought we'd try and fix it, and couldn't get anything out of it. Nothing. Just the bike just wasn't turning. And then we tried charging the battery because it was, by that point, it was already flat. Had lunch with them, and so it was a very long day, by the way, and a lot of thank yous. It actually got tiring to say thank you. And eventually, the story went that there was a lot of phone calls going on in the background with the young guy who'd picked me up, and he tried to find a mechanic for me, and he said, "Look, we can get a mechanic here, but he won't be able to come until Tuesday. So you can stay here, or you said you were going to Moab, which is 60 or 80 miles away from where they were. We could take you up to Moab if you like." I was like, "Oh, crap." Firstly, very kind of them, but very uncomfortable to spend all this time with these people I don't know from anything, with all the extended family.
Everybody in the town being incredibly kind and helpful.
Oh, it's too kind. It was sickening. Yeah, and
bastards.
Yeah. So I ended up. I thought the only way I can sort of see any positive was to offer if they took me up to
marry the daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. Eventually, I thought, well, yeah, I'll buy them the fuel. I'll fill up their tank of gas on their car. They wouldn't have it. They wouldn't have any of it. So they ended up driving 140 miles for me just to drop me off at some town I was thinking of heading to. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't part with money with these people. It was so kind of them.
And what was wrong with the bike?
One of my wonderful friends in Utah, who's a dub hand with the mechanics, he spent 6 months fixing it, and it was the rec, the ECU, basically all the computers and all the circuits on the bike got shot on the lightning. So
it was struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Didn't think about the old classic struck by lightning fault.
No,
These bikes
but
can suffer
the
sometimes.
the thing was, it did run a couple of times. I managed it when I was in Moab. I took it to a mechanic. The mechanic couldn't find anything wrong with it. So I was scratching my head. I went round to, because they just phoned me up and said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with your bike. We can't seem to recreate what you're describing." So
Yeah.
I went round there a bit bemused. I went there and said, "Oh, you're looking at the wrong bike. You clearly haven't seen my bike." And they turned the key, pressed ignition, and it started first time. And I was like, "Oh, that's uncanny." So took the bike from them, rode to the hostel where I was staying, and next morning when I thought I'd just go for a dirt ride, exactly the same thing, it wouldn't start. So I was fuming. But then I managed to get it to start, and there was nothing I could do. There wasn't like a bad connection somewhere. It was just like the computer, and it was just kind of like 50-50 on whether it wanted to work.
So that lightning strike must have been really close to your hammock then, mustn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. Can we just briefly then talk about that trip? Well, not briefly, but
Which trip?
Well, the America trip, because, all right, here's my take on it again, and then you can correct me. This was in the early days of the CRF, wasn't it? So this is what, 2013, did you say?
15.
15. So the CRF's only been out for maybe 2 or 3 years, but long enough for it to have a fairly reasonable second-hand value. But I remember being really impressed at the time in the way that you planned to do this America's trip, but you did this thing where you just bought the bike. Did you buy it on Craigslist or on eBay?
I did it on a local. Oh, no, I did it on eBay. You're right. I did it on eBay.
But you're just sat in London, searching the internet for CRS for sale near Utah, was it?
Yeah.
Well, go on, you tell it, because it was just a very impressive way to sort of set yourself up for a trip in America, I thought.
I have to caveat all of this by saying that I was having a midlife crisis. Excellent. And I was very sick of living in London. I was very sick of my job. I had no obligations, no dependents, and I was ready to let go of everything and just disappear. I was thinking this trip of just going and buying a bike in the US and doing a devil may care approach to it, and just, if I have to dump the bike somewhere, then I'll dump it, but it's an investment.
At that point, did you have a sort of an end point, a beginning and an end to a trip?
I had loosely I think I did a Google search of top places to visit in the US. And then sort of did a map of where they were on the West Coast, because I didn't really want to go all the way east. I had originally thought I wanted to do all of the US, but realized it was very big and lots of nothing in the middle. And I thought, on a small bike, it would be really boring to just be constantly, day after day, I did this much on the map, and not really feel like I did anything. So I stayed all on the West Coast. The idea was to end in Panama and then go on to Australia, leave the bike in Panama and go to Australia and start my new life there. But none of that happened. So
just talk us through the initial getting the bike, because
I had a great job in London, in central London. I had this really great job in a design office, and I didn't really socialize much with my work colleagues. I didn't really have much going on in my life at that time. And I would just, in my lunch break, just be browsing eBay and buying things on Amazon, and just sort of shipping them to friends I'd made through YouTube and Facebook and stuff. And I had a network of friends that I'd never met, and I was sending things to their houses. And one of them was a CRF 250. But it was such a surreal situation, because compared to the pound, the bike I bought in the US, it was so pimped up and so supremely good condition. It only had 1,000 miles on the clock. Yet the guy had already spent over $3,000 on upgrade. I think it was $4,000 on upgrading the bike. But the bike was only $4,000. He'd already spent another $4,000 on upgrading it, and then decided he didn't like it. I bought it off him. I mean, the tires still had the stickers on them. That he had like some really aggressive tires on.
Which came first? Did you buy the bike and then find a contact, or did you have the contact and then you looked for a bike near his house?
I already had a contact, but I ended up buying the bike in sort of Long Beach, California, and I had it shipped up with a courier service.
Oh, I presumed it was just sort of around the corner from somebody.
No, not at all. Right. It was panic all the way. You can imagine what it's like to buy something from some guy. I've never seen the bike. I don't even know if it runs. Then get a courier that I don't know to go and pick it up. to send it to someone else I don't know.
And then how long before you actually went out to see it and start the trip?
I think I bought it in October and I went out there in April or May. Yeah, April.
And then would you sort of register it to his address? Was that quite straightforward?
So simple. Everyone complained about it, the DMV, but I think it was easier than the UK system. The only thing different there is that you transfer the deeds of a vehicle. You have to get a new number plate. I got provisional plates to ride until I picked up my plates.
Yeah.
And it was bizarre because, it was like, well, you have to pick them up. I've got them at at my house. So you tell me when you're going to come and pick them up. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there soon. To me, it just seems so stupid to have to pick up plates.
You didn't need to prove where you lived or anything like that.
I didn't even know how the mechanics of it worked. I literally just said this, that, and they said, "Yep, here's the stamp." That'd be whatever, I don't know, $20 or something. I can't remember what it was. It happened so quick.
I stumbled across Ed March's little mini Jeep film last night. He had a similar thing where he was just registering this little tiny, looks like almost like a kid's Jeep. So it did sort of make it seem like you could pretty much take a lawnmower in and get it registered and put it on the road.
A couple of asides before going any further. Athens, I don't know if that's where you were in Greece, to Barcelona is 2,500 kilometres. Over 5 days. That's quite a long way, isn't it?
We did that on ferries.
It was a seafaring adventure trip.
It was two ferries, and it was great fun.
It was more of a cruise then.
It was a cruise, yeah.
What you got to take in mind there, Clive, is that we were wild camping the whole way, and the only times we actually got to sleep in beds and have showers was actually on the ferries.
Yeah.
On the cruise ships.
Yeah,
that'd been ideal. Sounds ideal. So the second question, that was the first point. The second point is, why did you have 2 DRZs?
I had 3.
Oh, for fuck's sake. You're worse than Noel. You kept one then?
No, actually, currently, you didn't ask me what I've got in my paddock. I currently own nothing because of the pandemic, and I just moved to Portugal. I needed to free up some money, and also I didn't know when I would be returning to the UK. That I had a bike under a cover sitting at my mum's house. I didn't really want to leave it there for another year. The maintenance alone and a new battery and all the other things that go with leaving a bike for a year would be just too unbearable. So I sold my NC 700 DCT, which is a wonderful bike.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it.
No, please do
tell Clive about it.
Oh, Jesus.
Clive, you've got to hear about it. Let me send you my link to Fuelly. I've managed to measure all of the fuel consumption.
Okay, you've got some great mates, Noel. First we had Ed with his fucking spreadsheet.
No, this is far better. This has got graphs.
So I think we should head back to America and talk about what happened next. I thought that you'd pretty much flown into Utah and then ridden up to Alaska and then just did the whole length of America right down into Mexico.
That's pretty much what I did, but a lot of it was discovery, and you got to also think about why I chose a CRF 250.
Had you seen anyone else doing long trips on CRFs at that point?
None.
No.
I wanted to do it on a DRZ 400 because I knew how I'd already done Africa on a 400, the DRZ.
And you had fucking 3 of them.
Exactly. That's why I had one. But actually, by the time I worked out how much it was going to cost to ship it over, it's already lost all of its value. I could just buy a bike. The CRF, the DRZs exist so abundantly in the US that it seems stupid to ship one from the UK and then have to ship it back. That's the same as buying a bike. So I didn't do that. But originally that was my setup, and that's why I had a pristine DRZ with very low mileage that I kept, and then I ended up selling it.
Hadn't you had a CRF in Britain before you set off, or did you get one?
Yeah, so I bought 2 CRFs at the same time.
Obviously, because that's what everybody does. All normal people do that, don't they?
That's what at least
66% of the people on this podcast, anyway.
I'd bought one in the US, having never ridden one. And so I thought, well, it'd be silly to do that without being familiar with the bike and not knowing what it's like to ride it day to day. So I commuted to work on a CRF 250 into London.
Did you think straight away, this will be fine for America, this bike?
I thought it was wonderful. Yeah. I genuinely, all the complaints you have about it, Clive, I disagree with. I like the fact that it's not good for the motorway. I genuinely mean that. Like the fact that it kind of dictates what kind of roads you have to take.
I was just thinking, how the fuck does he know what I think about my CRF? But then I just realised he listens to the podcast.
I listen to your podcast, and I know you say, you like to get on you like to have a big bike to be able to get to the place you want to ride. And I like the fact that the ride there is part of the journey, and that's part of the thing that you don't want to rush through. I kind of disagree with you there, and that's why I kind of like the CRF 250. I didn't want to get on the freeway, and the few times I did, I hated it. It was horrible, and it made me realize how much I enjoyed going on the slow roads. I set off with way too much gear. You have no idea how much gear I had. I just ended up, like, the first few months was just binning stuff. I bought a lot of equipment. Everything seemed so cheap to me in the US, and I'd been buying compulsively for months because I'd put about 50% aside of everything I earned whilst I was in the UK for my travel trip and savings.
Just lots of everything, or was it predominantly kit or clothes or just everything?
I didn't take much clothes, but I took a lot of gubbins.
Yeah.
A lot of
tripods.
No, not so much. I lost a tripod, a really nice tripod, but I did lose. I did have lots of gimmicks, like a lot of like.
You introduced me to gimbals. I know you loved a gimbal.
Oh yeah, like a gimbal.
Do you think you sort of learnt over the years to keep it simple? Or
No.
Well, this was his fourth. The US trip was the fourth trip, wasn't it? So.
There is something I did learn on that trip that I would say that's really important, and that it's more about your mindset and being, I don't want to get all EBGB on this, but like I think it's a lot about your mindset and knowing where you, like, learning yourself is like where you end up finding out when you're on the road for a long amount of time. I'm not saying if you take a weekend off, Clive, that you're going to find that, but after like weeks and months away and you're not really having any meaningful conversations with anyone, that loneliness really kicks in. You start learning stuff about yourself and learning about what your needs are, and that's what I ended up finding.
But you were in a very friendly country, weren't you? I can understand what that must be like, but you were in a place where you probably were getting into conversations at every petrol station, probably just with Harley riders asking you what the hell you were doing.
They were the bane of my existence. Those very conversations where I'd stroll into a petrol station and put my 7 liters into my fuel tank, and obviously there'll be a Harley rider who's got like 800 gallons to put into his bike, and he's bored while it's filling, so he'd come talk to me and ask me how many miles have I done, and it would be like, well, I've just set off, I've done 50 miles today, and immediately it'd be applauded with, that's nothing.
Yeah,
I've already done 700 and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay. And then the conversation ends the thing would be that if that sounds shocking or surprising, it's kind of multiplied if you have that same conversation every time you fill up, which was the case. And thankfully on the CRF 250 with a big tank, I actually only had to fuel up every 2 days. But that was the same conversation I had every time I filled up, with a Harley rider or someone with a truck would be saying, Utah. I'm like, yeah. Where's your car? I don't have one. Well, how did you get your bike here? I rode it. Funny thing would be, I'll be on my way down from Alaska and I'll be in Nevada, and they'd be, you're a long way from home. I was like, you have no idea. I've just done 12,000 miles and I'm only in the neighboring state. Those sort of things happened a lot, and I just didn't feel like answering to those sort of questions. It made you feel more lonely having to deal with the repetitive conversations that you end up having.
Was part of the mental struggle of it the fact that you didn't have sort of an end date? I mean, like Clive and his 5 days, he knows he's got 5 days and he's got to enjoy every single minute of it. Was it the fact that this was just going on and on and on, and you could almost see no end to it?
I think so. And also, I think you're so reliant on your own decisions every day, and every decision you make most often is wrong. And often you realize how sensitive you are to the weather. You could wake up and your fingers are numb and you're trying to untangle the cording of your hammock or something. You're screaming at yourself and you've got no idea what you're doing. And you're wondering, why the hell am I here? Why did I leave my cushy job in London? When I say cushy, I mean it was a job that was reliable. I always got paid on the month, But I don't mean it was huge figures. But I was very happy in that job. I could have stayed there I could be still there now, but it was one of those sort of jobs where if I'd not left, I'd still be there now. And I'm glad I left, and I'm glad I did what I did.
I was going to say, it's funny for you to say that, because most people would have gone off on a trip like that and thought, can't believe I'm doing this. Thank God I left that job. I can't imagine ever going back to that job or contemplating ever being in that job again. Whereas you weren't really thinking that anyway, were you? You were thinking, I could still be doing my job and having quite a nice life. Yeah.
Well, it's the security. I think the lack of security and those sort of things really do hit you hard sometimes when you don't realize what the undertaking is that you've put yourself through.
How much of this can we blame on America? Because I'm just thinking this was after you'd ridden down through Africa, wasn't it?
That's really interesting that you say that, because in doing Africa, I was never alone. And I ended up always meeting people and traveling the journey alone with other people. That was great. Fantastic. It really was fantastic. To just always be with other people, always doing that, where I've got that camaraderie where you could comment on that thing and, I didn't see that, but yeah, I'm sure that would always be the way. But I'd be day after day after day, and I'd be seeing the most wonderful, wonderful scenes and sights and experiences. And it was just me that had it. And after a while, you think, yeah, I'm lonely. I'm really lonely, and I want to share this with someone, whether it's a romantic other or just a mate. You kind of wish you had that. And so a lot of that crept in, and it played a big part of that trip actually. And I'm always torn between whether I'd rather ride with mates and have a laugh, but not really have full autonomy, because a lot of times it's like, we want to go to the pub tonight and get wasted, and we won't get an early start tomorrow because we're all hungover. That debate, or I want to spend an extra day in this city, but everyone else doesn't, and you end up like missing that, seeing some history or something. I don't know, because I know Clive loves history and really wants to do nice walks and hikes and stuff. Isn't that right?
That's not me. It's funny though that, I mean, even on the 5, 7, 10-day trips, you can have days where you just think, fucking hell, I just can't be arsed with this, can't you? Where you want to be somewhere else, just think, why have I bothered? But those days come and go, don't they? And that's just part and parcel of life. But I guess it's exaggerated when you're on your own in a strange place, thousands of miles from home.
Yeah, it was actually surprising how isolated I felt. A lot of the time. I felt like this isn't ever going to end. I've made this choice for myself, so it was really like, well, I can only blame myself for this one. But I mean, a lot of great things happened. Living in Mexico never was on my radar, became a wonderful thing, and I'm really happy I did it. Living in Mexico was truly fantastic, and that's how I got into doing photography professionally.
So you arrive in Mexico as part of that trip, and then do you just think, right, I'm just going to stay here for 6 months or a year, or why did you end up staying in Mexico?
I should back up a little bit. On my way up to Alaska, I met this Italian fella on a 250. And the funny thing was that it was a rainy day on a really long straight road in Canada, heading north. It was cold. I'm wearing my waterproof bike pants with a rain cover on top. I got my muffs on. I got my helmet. I got my snood on. My helmet's covered over in fog. You can barely see, and I can just see a dot on the hard shoulder, just moving almost at the same speed as me. And I'm like, it's a very fast bicycle or a very slow motorbike. Like I'm gonna catch up with him. As I'm getting close, I can see the little eye on his number plate. It's Italian. Wow. He's an Italian here. So I ended up just waving at him, and it was that awkward thing. I didn't really think much beyond what do I do once I wave at him. He was pointing at me, and I was pointing at him, and then we decided to pull over, even though it was pouring with rain, and there was nowhere to stop. It wasn't like there was a bus shelter. There was just nothing. So we stopped in the rain, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've been on the road for 2 years." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, fine." And it worked out. He'd done exactly the same trip I did through Africa. And then when he got to Cape Town, he didn't know how to get back to Italy. So he decided to go to South America and did all of South America and up. And I met him there. So we met on the road, and he'd already seen my bike a few days earlier. And long and the short of it, we ended up riding for 3 weeks together, and it was fantastic. And it was such great companionship. And it really, when I left riding with him, that's when it really hit me how much I missed having someone to ride with every day. And so anyway, I was really lonely riding down through California, Oregon, and California, and I got to Mexico. And I was like, I don't want to go on. I'm really sick of this. And what had happened simultaneously, his Yamaha WR250 had broken down, and he'd ended up buying an emergency bike and rode from Alaska straight to Mexico City. And he wanted to earn some money so he could fix his bike up in Alaska because he'd left it with some friends. So I was heading through Mexico at the time, and he'd bought like one of these big, I don't know, it was like a DeVille or whatever.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know.
Honda, yeah.
That's the old version of the NC, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was the DeVille. What was it? It was some. I hated
something with
it.
was it something with a lot of bodywork on it? Was it that one?
It like fitted integrated panniers, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it was disgusting. He loved it, and I couldn't stand it. It was the really horrible block 1980s headlight on it. The really hideous bike, and I couldn't tell. I did tell him actually. I hated it.
Yeah.
But he loved it. And it was a big. I think it must have been 1,000cc or above. I don't know. It was a big bike, and he'd zapped all the way down from Alaska down to Mexico, and he'd already rented a house and was working as an architect for this firm in Madrid and Mexico. So he was earning money already. And I said, well, do you mind if I stop by? So I ended up stopping by, renting a flat, and I stayed there for a while. And I ended up staying almost 8 months because I really wasn't enjoying traveling anymore. It was nice to have this mate that I had met. And I thought, well, what's the rush? I can always carry on down to Panama later. And so that's how I ended up staying in Mexico, and I loved it. And I ended up working as on a film production in Mexico City just by happenstance.
Do you think I know you're really good mates with Noel. Do you think if you'd had better friends, you'd enjoy travelling with people more?
No, I don't know.
It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer that.
No. I have that same question myself all the time. The thing is, I've had a lot of good trips with Noel, and I've always enjoyed them. But there's always that thing that you think, oh, if I was on my own, I would have done things differently. I would have spent an extra day there, or I would have done. I wouldn't have just left him in the dust, as Noel would do, But I don't know. I do like riding with friends, but I feel that when you get to a large number of riders, it actually becomes just herding cats. It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any more than 3 is horrible, in my opinion.
So that was Marco. Was it Marco that you met? What was his name?
Stefano.
Have you been in touch with him since?
Yeah, we talk all the time.
No.
We're still really good buddies.
So at the end of that, did the bike? What happened to the CRF? Did it go back up to Utah?
This is going a long way, isn't it? So after Mexico, I realized I didn't actually want to go anymore into Central America. I was kind of sick of all the nonsense of. I loved being in Central America. I just found that the nonsense of bureaucracy is really tiring when you're crossing borders and people always thinking that you're rich and they're going to try and take advantage of you, and you have to explain to them that you're not. And also being that I speak native Spanish, people found it more of a kind of step up to give you more grief, and it became like this thing I didn't really want to face, and I was looking for less resistance. I just wanted to enjoy the trip, not like I didn't want that sort of rawness anymore. So I decided to go back up north, and there was a lot of things I missed out in North America that I wanted to do, and I still had thousands in the bank because I'd saved a lot for 5 years. I thought I'd do some parachuting. I want to get my parachute license. I want to do a lot of hiking. I ended up doing a lot of things, and I ended up with many near-death situations. But I also fell madly in love with a wonderful girl on the way, and that was wonderful.
You've had a couple of false starts at kind of reinventing Neil's Inn and your YouTube channel. Is this you announcing yourself back onto the world?
Well, it's great that you ask. I have been suffering a lot since I got to Portugal with the pandemic, unemployment. I have had a lot of issues with depression, and it really kind of takes away a lot of the creativity that you have. Even though I've been sitting at home, thinking about doing the editing was not possible. It's that weird thing of, well, I've got all this free time, I should be able to just sit down and do it. But reality was I couldn't do it. And now the sun's shining a little bit brighter for me at the moment. And I'm feeling like I can get this done and pushed back. And put it back and get it all done now. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about that, and I'm ready to move on to brighter things. I've got other projects I'm looking forward to trying to do. So
You stepped away from social media for quite a long time then, didn't you?
I have. I'm still trying to keep quite divorced from it.
Whatever you do, don't sign up to Twitter. I probably, to be honest, I wouldn't even listen to this fucking podcast if I were you.
I quite enjoy it when I'm walking the dogs. I love what I listen to you guys. My idea is I do mostly the YouTube things. Actually, always been for myself and for family and friends. The fact that I got 3,000 followers on YouTube was just by coincidence, and yeah, it's great. But I mean, I actually found it more of a burden than it was a pleasure. It was the worst thing to have. Social media on the road, whenever you're just trying to get Google Maps up to see if there's a restaurant nearby, and you've got 500 messages and people trying to connect with you on LinkedIn, and you're like, why? Oh, I saw your YouTube video and I now want to connect with you on LinkedIn, or what's your favorite tire type? I can't deal with that question right now. I'm just trying to find a restaurant. I don't want to have this conversation with you. I don't know you. People would ask you without even a hi. It'd be like, Neil, quick, what's your chain tension? I don't know. Let me check.
But to have a YouTube channel, to have an Instagram account, and to have all of that, what's the driving force behind that for you?
I didn't enjoy it at all.
There must be something in it though, because you were doing your blogging and all sorts years ago.
I enjoyed talking to the camera. I think that's funny and being goofy. That to me was always enjoyable to like share with your friends and family. I think you got to follow the thread of where that comes from. I mean, I originally started with emails, and you're sending an email to all your friends. I currently got to Berlin. It's great. I just and here's a picture of the hot dog I got. And then people's like, well, actually, can you start sending me all these emails? Okay, fine. I'll post.
Not interested in your hot dog.
Yeah. Look at my Instagram if you want to see what I'm doing. So then it became that, and that's why I created a separate account just for my travel stuff. And then you start getting all these randoms following you, and then you think, well, actually, I'm not doing it for them. You have to remind yourself you're not doing it for them. You kind of you're doing one update that goes to everyone, and if anyone wants to see it, they can see it. But when it goes to everyone plus their mate, you don't know what to do with it. So,
if you found the magic money tree, where are you going to go?
That's a really good question, and
would you do it again?
It's a bit complicated at the moment, having a couple of dependents.
You'd have to get back for the dog.
But there's a couple of trips that I'm thinking about, and Stefano and I have been talking about it for a while. He actually got sponsorship just before the pandemic, and that all washed up. And I don't want to kind of share it publicly, but
you're on a podcast that goes out publicly.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going to tell you what the details are.
6 people will know about it if you talk about it.
Yeah, the idea of actually doing something on electric bikes or an electric vehicle would be really exciting.
You need to watch Bruce Teapot One Smart's video series on his 48-hour Land's End, John O'Groats, Cardiff, Norwich challenge. When he did it on an electric bike, you might change your mind.
Yeah, there's a girl riding down through Morocco, I think, at the moment, or a few weeks ago was trying to do it on an electric bike. Stumbled across it on Instagram, I think, but it's why not?
I didn't say a bike. I said a vehicle.
A vehicle.
And I think it'd be really
Tesla.
fun to. My idea is to jerry rig one with like solar panels on top.
A couple of AAAs. Some copper wire.
I like the idea of actually being totally autonomous. So like the idea of the only thing that you need to buy are tires and new motors maybe, but that idea that you could, if needed, you could just leave the car or the bike in the sun, and it just creates more fuel, more distance. It sounds crazy. I don't know. That's.
It doesn't sound crazy to me, because I bought one of those Anker power pack things, and it's got a solar thing on top, and it only takes a week to charge in the sun.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
No, absolutely shit.
The one good thing, you mentioned it before, the reason we all love and adore and recommend muffs to people is because of Neil Gonzalez. It was Neil that got me into muffs. And as always, I used to ridicule him for his muffs and say they
Still
look
does.
absolutely ugly and ridiculous. And he
Still
kept
does.
saying, well, if you just try them, you'll realize just how great they are. And of course, he was absolutely right.
And I did exactly the same to Noel. Neil, thank you. You were right.
You know what though? That and gardening gloves. That's all I needed.
Gardening gloves.
I found a really nice set. I've not ever been able to replace them since, but had these really nice, really thin leather gloves.
Yeah. They're perhaps the only kind of gloves that Clive doesn't have in his glove drawer.
I know, exactly. You know what? The thing is, I got like these fat fingers, really fat fingers.
I've got gardening gloves. Of course I have.
There you go.
Are they gardening gloves or are they Harley Davidson gloves? It's hard to tell.
They're kind of the deerskin roper kind of design.
No, they look like kind of cowboy rodeo gloves.
Yeah, but they're very cheap, made in Pakistan. But
what the hell do you use those for?
Waving,
obviously.
Oh, whatever I'm doing around the house, carrying heavy things.
But also, you're a big advocate of the hammock. All that America trip was done with a hammock, wasn't it?
Everything comes with a preface, doesn't it? I broke my back in 2012. Ever since then, I had sciatica, which was really horrible. And whenever I camped in a tent, it really gave me a really crap night's sleep. And then I had a really crap day on the bike the day after sleeping on the tent. But I still enjoyed camping and I still enjoyed that whole thing. But I just didn't want to have to compromise to sleeping in a hotel because I've got bad back and I'm all. And I was only 32 at the time when I did my back in, and I'm thank the high spirits, but yeah, my back's a lot better nowadays. But the hammock was amazing. It just transformed everything, and it's so comfortable. It's probably one of the best night's sleep.
Do you think there were times where it was easier to sort of put a hammock up in America than it was to put a tent up because of the ground, say? Because of the rivers flowing around underneath you.
Yeah.
Handy that night.
The thing is, when you go looking to pitch your tent, you go out with a predefined set of ideas of what you're looking for: flat ground without too many thorns on it, without too many rocks. You don't want it in someone's driveway. You got all these different ideas of what you need, but with a hammock, it's a different set of ideas, and they're totally acceptable. But you can pitch on a steep hill. You can have rocks, thorns, and all sorts underneath you, and you can pitch any which way. As long as there's two trees, and the distances are within tolerance, you got a lot of flexibility there. And it's super comfortable. That's the thing I can't stress enough, is that having a really good night's sleep is so important to having a good day out on the road the next day.
Did you once have a mountain lion or something, or have I just seen too many YouTube videos?
No, I did. I had bear, coyote, and a mountain lion all come to see me at different times whilst camping. Each time was terrifying, but the mountain lion is the one that scared me the most. Yeah.
What did it do? Was it just sniffing around, or?
So he stalked, or I don't know, he or she stalked me for about 40 minutes, and they were going around me. I got as close. Got as close. Third person.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Third person, perfect. It in itself came to sniff me about, I don't know, it must have been, it was within breath's distance because I could smell its breath.
Wow.
And it was putrid and it was really crappy, and I didn't know what the hell to do because I'm laying in a hammock. Your shoulders are sort of rolled in from the hammock because by the time you've been sitting there for long enough, you kind of sort of readjust yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
And
at that point, did you think, damn, I wish I was in a tent?
No.
Rather than having my bottom bitten.
Damn, I wish I was in my flat in London.
No, it was such a surreal thing because it was like this. All of the discussions I had in my head, most of them were about having a gun. ended up sort of coming around full circle, thinking, no, I've made all the right choices. You know,
had you been offered a gun by the guy that kept the CRF for you? Did he say, "Oh, you'll need this," and you went, "No, I'm British, don't need that."
I had several times, several people offer me like, you should get yourself one of these or something similar, you know. And it was, you know, someone showed me a Glock or something like this. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's a bit like when I showed you my straight razor and you just immediately stuck your finger on the blade.
We need to finish the mountain lion story. What the fuck happened? We got to smelling its putrid breath, and it's a bit of a cliffhanger, isn't it? Come back for next week's exciting episode.
Was stalked by this mountain lion for several whiles. It felt like an eternity. It was the middle of the night. I'd already been sleeping for a while, and it was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 a.m. I can't remember clearly now, but I'm just laying there. I'm in 2 miles off the beaten track from a nearest road, which was in the middle of nowhere. And literally, I couldn't think of. There was zero phone reception, in case you were wondering. There was nothing I could have done that would have was a phone call away. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell have I done? You know, why am I here? Why have I chosen to do this chain of events where I'm here now and I'm going to die? And am I okay if everything ends this way? You know,
were your affairs in order at this point?
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
No. To summarize, I sat there. I had do you know what a bear bell is?
A bear bell? I've never had the need to understand and know what a bear bell is. I'm assuming it's a bell you ring when you need a bear.
Oh yeah. So it's like what the Morris dancers have. You know, these a little bell.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
I tell you what, the thing with bears is they don't like the sound of metal, the jangle of metal. So if you buy, they're really common in camping shops in the US, and you just attach it to your belt.
He's just taking the piss out of us now.
I know.
But when you think about it, I don't think there is actually any recorded evidence of a Morris dancer ever being attacked by a bear.
No, we know.
Anyway, putrid breath. What next?
What I was trying to tell you was that bear bells are designed to deter bears from coming near you. They don't like the sound of metal jangling. They just keep away. I never saw a bear whilst having the bear bell. So I've got this little bear bell hanging off my hammock, and I'm jingling it in the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m. in the night. And I've got this floodlight headlamp thing. And I'm just shining it all over, just sweeping around, I'm hanging upside down out of my hammock, sort of trying to see, can I see anything out of my hammock?
I'm imagining this mountain lion just pouring this bell, just playing with it. Like,
yeah. I've got this bush knife that I've got, which, you know, used for preparing like firewood. But that's all I used it for. And I was thinking, what the hell do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I just sat there in a huge panic for best part of an hour, and eventually I fell asleep.
He got bored with imminent death and fell asleep.
That's quite an admirable approach to abject terror of being flooded or eaten by a mountain lion. Immediate reaction, I'll just have a kip. So the bear incident, even though you had the bear bell, and it's not for summoning bears.
At that point, I didn't have a bear bell. I thought it was a myth. And that was the thing, was I'd just come up from, I think, Idaho, somewhere, Nevada. I don't know where I'd come in from, but I was in southern Oregon, camped out in a state campsite, which was unnormal for me. And I thought I'd just stay at this place. And that's where one of the deciding points where I decided not to camp in campsites anymore, because there's always trash, and bears love trash. And so I had a wrapper, or a sweet wrapper or something underneath the hammock, somewhere in the leaf foliage. I didn't see it, pitched up in the night, in the dark. And in the middle of the night, I had this thump, 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 and then extremely loud, heavy breaths that were tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And it did lift its head up, and it sort of nudged me in the hammock, and I shattered brick.
Sounds like every night I've ever camped with Clive.
I've never nudged you with my nose.
Exactly. Your nose will be all right.
After that, I told someone about it, and they said, "Well, you need a bear bell and bear spray." So I ended up buying both.
Well, how do you find? I'd be absolutely shitting myself to be camping in a place that I knew there were bears.
I was quite excited about it.
Oh, man.
Stefano and I, we'd talked about it so much because whenever we had Wi-Fi, we'd search for bears and see what do
you mean search for bears with Wi-Fi? What do you mean?
Whenever we got Wi-Fi, we'd look for videos.
You're such a millennial searching for bears with Wi-Fi.
No, whenever we got to like a restaurant or something like that, we'd connect to the Wi-Fi and we'd be like, "Well, I've heard of bears, and I don't know what they look like." Then people would be telling you, "Oh, is it a brown bear or is it a black bear?" And I don't know the difference.
Yeah, run or don't run.
And the what the charge is like and what you should do with the charge. So we'd be watching these videos, like getting a real panic about it, but really excited about it at the same time. It would be, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm gonna risk it. I'm going to try. But it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. And several times I drove past bear on the side of the road, and it was amazing, really amazing. Like just seeing them there, they look at you like a bewildered dog.
Black bears predominantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Yogi Bear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I originally didn't get into this adventure biking because, I saw Ewan McGregor or anything like that. I was doing my dissertation at architecture school, and I wanted to see some properties of these by this architect in Sweden. And so this whole thing came from the only means of transport I could afford was riding my bike that I had at the time, which was a Triumph Tiger. And I was going to just ride up to Sweden without any planning or any arrangements. I just went to thing. But then when I was trying to plan how was I going to get to these towns that were not near airports, and how, on a student budget, how was I going to go to these places? I thought, well, wouldn't it be romantic? I just ride my bike and get to these places, and I'll just turn up and it'll be there, and I could just see it, and I could just go inside and it'll be great. But the reality was nothing like that, and I set off, and I shared on Instagram recently the mishaps of that adventure, where two of the students that were, my colleagues, invited themselves along, and I had to like get rid of them in a polite way. And
one was an absolute arsehole, wasn't he? That was terrible.
Yeah. It was a pain in the ass. But anyway, I ended up going to Sweden. I ended up going to these little towns where this architect built like a courthouse and what have you. But I didn't realize, it wasn't in commission. The building was privately owned, and it wasn't publicly available to visit or anything. And I just went into the local library, and I asked the librarians. It was like the courthouse around the corner. Is it? How do I go? How do I go about going inside? And they said, "Oh, are you the one coming for the appointment today?" I was like, "Yeah, no, yeah." And it worked out minutes later. There was an author who was doing a review of the building for some academic purpose, and she had an appointment it was 5 to 1, for example. I had turned up, and she turned up at 1, and I just literally went in with her. And usually you have to have like a 6-month appointment to get access to see this building, and I just went in, and I had the same luck just going around the rest of Sweden. The whole thing with the motorbike thing was, I realized after spending 3 weeks on the road, just to do the Sweden and Norway thing, that I ended up realizing, I wonder if anyone else has ever done motorbike traveling long distance. and then it took me down this rabbit hole of everyone going, well, Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman did this thing. And I'm like, who are they? Yeah, so that ended up coming up. And then I realized I didn't like having such a big bike. The Triumph Tiger it made me go very fast. And I didn't enjoy going that fast. After a while of doing 100 miles an hour, it just gets really boring. So I started going down scaling and ended up going to 250.
When you've found the magic money tree, what are you going to get to go and travel on again?
I think I'd probably get sponsorship. I don't think I want to buy a bike.
Who are you going to get sponsorship from?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I think I'll do that.
Yeah, I'm going to get loads of free kit from a mate. Oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, hang on. I think as you get to a certain age and experience level, I think it's more likely if you're a proven person to have done what you've done, it's much easier to get sponsorship. Not that I'm necessarily looking for it, but I've had it pitched to me already a few times, and it's not something I'm looking to get, but I would probably consider it if it was the right thing.
All right.
I mean,
So with the money from Bear Bell Zara's,
yeah.
what are you going to buy? What are they going to buy?
I don't know what's out there yet in the electric world. I'm looking to go electric, and like I say, that would be the trip. That would be the next trip. It would definitely have to be electric. And
Right, so the one that's just come out, which is supposed to got 100-mile range, is the Energica Xperia, and they're only €25,000 plus VAT. So for less than €30,000, you've got a 100-mile range.
the company that someone had been speaking to had already figured out a bike with much longer range. We're talking about 200-mile range.
Wow.
On an electric, and it had space for luggage. And it was very much, the company was very keen to get him to do the trip because they wanted to prove that the bike was capable of doing what it's designed to do. So it was an adventure bike electric. You're almost doing them some ground research of doing a trip like that. So
the Xperia from Energica, the range city 261 miles, combined 160 miles, extra urban 130 miles.
What are you supposed to do with all these? Just take a mean average of all of those?
Well, you take the combined, don't you, of 160 miles. The thing is, you start thrashing any electric bike and it just burns through the power.
For sure. For me, I think what's really interesting about that is, especially at this current time where we're talking about fuel being an issue, the cost of it, and all that. I think you should, I would like to be someone at the frontier of explaining that, electrics are the way forward. We're not quite there yet. It's not run of the mill at the moment. It's not something that we can all afford, or it's not something that we all can have. But if you could prove that stupid Bob down the road did it tens of thousands of miles on a bike that actually only had to charge it so many times, it would really sort of turn someone's head, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah.
The thing is, Neil, you've mentioned things making you anxious about 3 times already in the last hour and 37 minutes.
Yeah, range anxiety.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's one thing. I've never had that. I tell you what, range anxiety has pretty much never, even when I ran out of fuel in Africa and Botswana with the big 30-litre tank that I had on the DRZ.
Why has that not bothered you? Is it just because you've always thought something will it'll sort itself out?
It always solved itself.
Yeah.
That was never an issue. With the CRF 250 driving across somewhere in the desert in the pouring rain, which you can't imagine what a rainy desert looks like. Literally, the bike was stuttering, and I was like, "Oh crap!" Because there's literally, I know that the last 80 miles behind me was nothing, and I set off already with 40 miles on the tank, and I know that I haven't really got. Literally, I'm gonna run out of something. I'm just gonna keep riding until the bike stops. And thankfully, just as the bike was stopping, there was a fuel tank, petrol station, and that's the luck I've always had. And I don't know, I can't bank on it. I'm very hard on myself. I always criticize myself for these sort of things.
Have you ever run out of fuel?
Well, Botswana, yeah, I ran out of fuel. I still had 2 liters in the tank, but the 2 liters on that big tank, what was it by Aqualine or whatever it was, that Australian company?
Yeah.
That make the big tanks. The position of that fuel is actually below the carburetor. So right. so you got 2 liters of fuel that are never going to be used. So, just carrying it around, yeah. But I never. Everyone said, "Oh, I think you ran out of fuel, Neil." I'm like, no. I still got. You can see it. Look, it's transparent tank. You can see it. Got 2 liters there at least. It's the only thing that could be. Yeah, no. Well, let's just test. We've got a spare few liters in the back. Yeah, we'll just put that in, just see if that does anything. Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
So anyway, bike trips didn't start off as bike trips.
No, they never did, and the whole bike trip thing came from liking the idea of just being under your own steam, being like, I'd done a lot of backpacking. I did a lot of traveling when I was much younger, and I liked the independence, but I hate the fact that you're governed by a train station or a bus station, and you're on foot and you have to go there and come here, and it'd be nice to have a car, but cars require a lot of maintenance that I don't know how to do. And so I thought motorbikes are a lot easier. They got lower maintenance, right? And that was how I got into it. I had a motorbike and I just used it, and I loved it.
A massive thanks to Neil. Really enjoyed that conversation. A lot of fun, a lot of amazing stories. We didn't even get into Africa, so at some point we're going to have to get Neil back in to talk about his journey through Africa. I dread to think of the stories he's got to tell from there. A couple of things. I should have by now launched the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast Awards for 2023. So please seek out those awards. It's a Google form. I would have shared the link in our social media profiles. Please go in there and vote for your favourite pieces of kit, and just your favourite pieces of kit. We want your nominations and your recommendations for the sort of thing that people should be buying. There's something like 31 different categories. You don't have to have an answer to every single category. Just the bits of kit that you care passionately about, or the bikes that you care passionately about, or the providers that you care passionately about. Let us know who they are so people know where to go and get their stuff from. Right, we've got one more episode coming up, which again is a cracker. We've got Joe Mercer and Adam Mitchinson. Joe's from Desert Rose and Adam is from Rally Raid, and we talk about bike preparation and bike maintenance. There's a lot of great stuff in there as well. They taught me some things. If nothing else, at least you'll learn how to lubricate a chain properly. Right, we'll see you next week. And then, as I said before, we're going to take a bit of a break over Christmas. So we will see you in the new year. Some massive guests lined up for then as well. Should be good. See you later. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.